There were some tense and nasty moments at the White House briefing today. Wow. CNN senior White House correspondent Ed Henry was there. He witnessed it all. And Ed, this surrounded a question from a Russian reporter about the Arizona shooting. Tell me more.
It was pretty interesting, kind of a surreal moment, one that was really unexpected, and I can't think of another example like this. The reporter's name is Andrei Sitov of the TASS news agency. He's a Washington bureau chief. He's covered the White House for a long time, going back to at least the Bush administration, as I recall. So this is not a newcomer, and he basically was asking Robert Gibbs about whether or not the tragedy in Tucson is just an example of the U.S. paying a price for freedom, and that basically this should be expected. This is part of America, that you're going to have violence like this. The reporters are pretty upset about the context of the question coming from a Russian reporter sort of raising these questions about American freedoms. And you can tell Robert Gibbs was pretty peeved. Take a listen to this exchange.
This is America. The democracy, the freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly, the freedom to petition your government. And many people outside would also say, and the quote-unquote freedom of a deranged mind to react in a violent way is also America. How do you respond to that? No, it's not.
No, I would disagree vehemently with that. There's nothing in the values of our country. There's nothing on the many laws on our books that would provide for somebody to impugn and impede on the very freedoms that you began with by exercising the actions that that individual took on that day. That is not American. I think there's agreement on all sides of the political spectrum. Violence is never, ever acceptable. We had people that died. We had people whose lives will be changed forever because of the deranged actions of a madman. Those are not American.
You can hear Robert Gibbs right there, very emotional, and saying the deranged actions of a madman. That's much further than he wanted to go earlier in the briefing. He was saying, look, the investigation is ongoing. He didn't want to comment. The last thing he wants to do from the White House podium, obviously, is comment on the investigation, comment on the state of the mind of the suspect here. But he did there because I think he was justifiably a little upset about the question. Now, I just got off the phone with Andrei Sitov, the Russian reporter. My producer, Emily Schultz, was able to get him on the phone. I hopped on and asked him what he meant. And he said two important things to underscore. Number one, he said, we offer our condolences to the American people and especially to the victims of this random act of violence. In no way do we condone the actions of the deranged madman who did this. Then he added, I also believe what happened is a terrible price that the United States pays for the freedoms and liberties that Americans enjoy. This country, unfortunately, suffered through several presidents being attacked. He mentioned President Kennedy, President Reagan. My point is that there is the good side of the freedoms and liberties and rights, but there is the reverse side. And Andrei Sitov went on to say that could be restricting gun control rights. He said that's something it doesn't seem like Americans want to do right now. And so you can imagine that this was a question that really sparked a lot of back and forth.
There's no violence or mentally unbalanced people in Russia? I mean, did you ever hear of the Russian mob killing journalists in Russia?
Well,
which is going on, like, more often than it should, and they're dying grisly deaths? No other leaders of countries were assassinated anywhere in the world?
Right, and that's why there were not only Robert Gibbs, as we played that sound, was pretty miffed, but there were reporters, including myself, saying, what in the world's going on? I heard Bill Press of the talk radio host saying, because he was sitting right near this reporter, saying, come on, this is not America. This is not unique to America. What are you talking about? And so, believe me, that's why we're highlighting it. It was pretty tense in there because a lot of people were raising their eyebrows.
Describe that to me. Like, after he asked this question and Robert Gibbs answered it, what did the other correspondents do?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what happened. Robert Gibbs was so miffed about the whole thing that he abruptly said, thank you, and walked out, a briefing over. And so reporters, were filing out, scratching their heads. Some of us went up to him and said, what gives here? And he's now spoken very openly and said, look, he just believes that, in his words, there's a price for the freedom and that Americans need to understand that balance. I think there were people in the room, Americans, who were upset at what sounded like a lecture from a Russian reporter, frankly.
Wow. Did you ever experience anything like that before?
I've never seen anything like that in the White House briefing room before, ever. And that's why when it happened, it was pretty amazing. And then afterwards, we immediately wanted to turn that sound because it's just seeing a reporter ask the question in that way was very unexpected and nothing I've ever seen like that.
Well, and it's not, I mean, we're still feeling the full effects of that tragedy. It's not like we're getting over it, and then maybe the questions would have been better accepted at that point.
And that's an important point. You're right, because the bottom line is sure, just academically, is there a plus and a negative to freedoms? Yes, but just days after 6 people are killed, 13 wounded, obviously this is why it was pretty raw.
Ed Henry reporting live for us from Washington. Thanks. We're still awaiting the